Good morning, my lovelies, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. I am Dr. Minette Riordan, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I missed you last week, and I had an amazing in person art retreat where we were painting animals for multiple days, and it was just pure joy. So, if you are brand new to painting in your PJs, this year we're focusing on all kinds of paper dolls. And in May, we just started creating what I'm calling a Wayfinder doll. Good morning, Karen. And a Wayfinder doll is a doll that represents all the different ways that we connect to our inner voice, our inner wisdom, our inner intuition. And one of the best ways to acknowledge that in the creation of our doll is thinking about different symbols that for us capture that idea of what does it look like or mean to connect to our own inner voice and our own intuition. And painting in your PJs is all about how do we use art as a powerful tool for personal growth and self discovery. I find that when we can get out of our over busy, overthinking heads and back into our creative spirit, then magic happens. We release old stories. We get to rewrite the new stories of our life, especially as we get older and step into midlife. There's new curious questions that arise like, who am I? What's my purpose? Where am I going? And art is one of the fastest ways to get the clarity that we're seeking. So all of my programs at MinetteRiordan.com really point you in the direction of using art to find your voice, to find your purpose, to reconnect to the inner wisdom that lies within, but may have gotten a little bit buried over the years from so many different roles that you've played, from stories that you've embodied, things that you've been told. So our Wayfinder doll is like a starting point on this journey of self-discovery to remind us to connect within. So I'm going to get back over to my camera. So in part one of this video, I showed how to make the face. This morning, I started playing with some ideas for putting a little bit of hair on her. I've decided that she needs some arms. So I think I'm going to give her some arms as well. And I just used leftover embroidery floss from other projects, put one stitch through the top of her head and just tied it off on the top. I don't know if it's done yet. I may get my hot glue out and give it a little shape, but she's got a little bit of beginnings here. And I made a first sample dress as well. So we're going to talk about making that dress today. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit there. There we go. But before we dive in, I want to talk about this idea of using sacred symbols. So my son and I collaborated to create a project called the Sacred Symbols deck. There are 48 different cards that represent, good morning, Teddy, been missing you too, love. 48 different symbols in this deck that represent the different elements. There's a variety of different shapes. Each one of these symbols has meaning, and the deck can be purchased. The digital version of the deck can be I can't talk, purchased on our website. And I put a link in the description of this video to this deck of symbols. You can see I love ribbons. So I cut mine out, punched holes, and just added a little bit of leftover ribbon, which would also make pretty hair. Or so I love all the hanging bits and bobs of things. And sorry, those are a little bit blurry when I lift them up. But I started thinking about, isn't that interesting? So I randomly drew this arrow is what popped up this morning as I'm playing. So maybe an arrow needs to go on my doll somewhere to remind me to, good morning, Katie, to move in the direction of my purpose. And when you purchase the digital deck, it includes like 20 different ways to work with symbols in your life and in your creative practice. So it's a great tool that can be used either randomly or intentionally for adding different symbols to your artwork. And I think it's a powerful practice to take into consideration when we're talking about creating this very simple felt Wayfinder doll, that the intention behind this doll is self-discovery. She is a visual reminder to zero in on listening and paying attention to ourselves. And I haven't finished the other one yet. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but I really want to come in and finish this one. I like that I added more symbols to her, so I want to come back with her. And I was looking at her this morning, figuring out where are we going to go next. So today we're going to make her dress, but of course you can make a blouse and a pair of pants or a skirt or shirt or simply a cape, whatever you want. Because remember, our doll, we just did the torso because we're going to create this very layered doll. Maybe she wants a little like fun bun up on her head or something. So this is the part where we really, get to start to play and have some fun with our dolls. I'll just move that up out of the way. But as I was looking at her this morning and really sitting with ideas and where to go next, I had that insight that one, I think I want a couple of more symbols on her torso, which I'll add at another time before she's all put together, but she needs some arms. And I bought this little sample set of felt, as we do, on Amazon to play with and just to test out, but it has one sheet of every color, and I didn't have any scraps left from her torso, so her arms are going to be a little bit different shade, and that is okay with me for sure. I was up early this morning painting. I've got paint all over me, so I was looking at adding some arms to her and some really simple arms. I should have grabbed one of my templates. So when we think about arms kind of come off of our shoulders. And I want these to go kind of through her dress as well. So I'm going to draw one arm and then simply use that arm as a template for drawing all the other ones. So one of the things I do like about felt is it's pretty easy to draw right on the felt, and that one just barely fit on there. And when I am going to make that arm just a little bit longer than where I want it to go on the body so that we have the opportunity to kind of stitch that on. She may decide she needs some cute, sexy shoes, or maybe some legs, or some nice bare feet also, but for now we're going to start with some arms and just continue to bring this doll to life. And what I want you to notice as you're sort of following along on this journey with me of creating this Wayfinder doll is that I don't have a pattern. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. This is 100% an experiment. And if you're new to me, oh, lovely. I hope you're having fun on Corfu, Carolyn. Thanks for popping in while you're on a holiday. And if you're new to me, this is not a step-by-step art class by any means. This is very much I'm here to experiment, try things, see how they work, make mistakes, get it wrong, get it right. And I learn so much about myself in the process of this journey, right? And I think by the time we get her all put together, then Now she's looking better. I think it was bugging me that she didn't have arms. But as we go along and we start to assemble different versions of dolls, whether they're paper, whether they're fabric, whether they're flat or dimensional, be open to the experimentation and letting the doll take you on the journey. Don't feel like you need to have it all figured out when you start. Kind of like life, but it's true for pretty much any art as well, is that the more that you are just connected to the process, one, the more fun you're going to have, the less you're going to get caught up in perfectionism, and the more you're going to discover about yourself, about where do you get stuck. What are the parts that feel challenging? What are also the parts that feel delightful? So I'm going to see if I can cut out 3 arms all at once. It may be a mess, but I want this part to go a little bit faster. It's getting all those little details of the hands. I might have to come back and clean up the hands a little bit on the bottoms, but I think we can mostly get those arms created, save all those scrappy bits. Come in with those tiny scissors. And what I noticed when I started working on my sample project for this is how much fun it was to stitch into the felt. It's very soft and forgiving. So if you think about your arms and when you're putting together any kind of a doll, whether it's in paper or fabric, and your thumbs are towards your body, right? So we want to make sure, notice she's got these little short thumbs towards her body here. All right, let's bring you back. And so for the other one, we're just going to flip it over. Trim that hand up a little bit. Didn't get that piece underneath. And that one we're just going to turn over so that thumb is pointing inwards. And then I will use that applique stitch again to come back and stitch those up together. And I will do that after the call because I really want to focus on the dress today, but I wanted to show you how I would put some arms on here. And if you remember from our call last week, or if you haven't watched part 1, that's fine. You can watch it a little later on your own schedule. The double layer of felt, it can be stuffed, but it doesn't need to be. And I just like the weight of the double pieces. It felt like then the felt wasn't as flimsy and it gave it a little bit of substance. So there, now she has some arms, which feels a little bit better. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a pattern for our dress. And I kept this one super simple, just kind of a long sheath almost, because I really wanted lots of space to add the symbols on. And I think on this next one, I might want to also add a little pocket where I could tuck in a little note from my Wayfinder. Interesting. And as I'm sitting here sort of, playing with her and thinking about her, there's a sense of she needs a name. She wants to have a name. I don't know what that name is yet, but your doll will tell you what her name is. So you might think about We just did this in our fairy godmother class as well. You might think about a name. What is the name? She's not telling me her name yet, but she definitely wants to have a name. So I'm going to grab just a scrap piece of paper, right, that has some other notes and some writing on it. And I'm going to create a little bit of a pattern here for myself. And this time I'm going to leave those holes in the side for where the arms go, but I don't need those right this second. And I think I might want more of a scoop neck on this one. So you're going to want your felt outfit to be a little bit wider than the torso of your doll. Maybe this one even wants to be a little bit longer, have a little more, maybe a scallop shape to it. Notice I'm just hand drawing this, being very sketchy. And this is where the neck is, so if I want this to be a scoop neck, and I'm starting on paper, right, so that I have a simple pattern for drawing her. So we're going to cut the pattern out. And when I did this one, it ended up being a little shorter than I wanted, so I stitched in this little piece of fringe, which gave her a little bit of a maybe 60s or 70s hippie feel. It felt like this aspect of myself is very much a free spirit. She loves adventure. She loves to roam. This may be an aspect of you that has been lost for a little while that you need to recover. That inner voice, maybe you have stopped listening. To that part of you that is innately wise. Okay, so see how we did. So I like that shape. I'm zoomed in super close because of when we do the stitching, and I realize it's very close. Okay, so I like the scoop shape. The shoulders feel good. Let me zoom out so you can see the whole thing here for a second. So there she is. She's starting to come together to have some life. And now I'm like, oh, is she gonna, she might want some bare feet. So she's telling me that she's sort of this hippie doll. I think she's going to need some wings at some point, and maybe some just cute little feet peeking out of the bottom here of her dress. And I made her dress extra long, and my little pieces of sample felt I made are not that long, so either I can make it shorter or I can just make it in two pieces. I was really called to these super bright, happy colors today. All right, so we're going to set those arms aside for later. We're going to set our torso aside for now. And I'm going to come in here. Just going to take that pencil, and when I go to stitch it, I always try to remember to put the pencil marks on the inside so they don't show in the final marks. And I'm going to also mark here where the bottom of the felt is. And so she, like the other one, is going to have a bit of a fringe on her dress or a ruffle. It might be something that I add some lace to at another stage. And I can, on this one, I added the fringe on the front, but not on the back, right? So you can decide, and then it's so simple to put together, right? So it just pops right into the dress, either from the top or the bottom. It'll be a little trickier when we add those arms. She kind of looks like she's wrapped in a blanket in this one. And so it's kind of fun to think about her having multiple dresses. I think maybe she needs like twice as much hair. She needs lots of hair. I think I always wanted to have long hair, but then when I let it get long, I didn't actually enjoy having long hair. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here with the green to make the back of the dress. And note to self in the future to buy bigger sheets of felt. They usually come in like an 8.5 by 11 or 9 by 12. And I didn't want to buy a lot because I didn't know if I was going to enjoy working with it. And then over here, I'm going to draw the little bit of fringe that will attach to the front. And I think also her little, and this also needs to be a little bit longer so it'll get stitched onto the dress. And then maybe she's also going to have some kind of maybe pretty little pocket. So a lot of stitching to do. But I love these bright, bold colors. So I'm curious as you're listening and you're thinking about the different ways that you connect to your own intuition. Is there a color, a symbol, a shape that just kind of naturally pops to mind when you think about visually representing intuition or voice? We all have that inner voice within, and sometimes we're taught to ignore it, we're taught to avoid it. We doubt its truth. Hearts, green and pink, beautiful. I love that. All right, she's got a nice ruffle. And I don't know that I would naturally think of this bright yellow as connecting to intuition, but it was the color that drew me in. So again, I'm just trusting that. I'm trusting that my doll, oh, her name is Veronica, she just told me, trusting that that is the color that she wants. Turquoise and blue, sometimes purples. Beautiful. I love that. So here's her little fancy ruffle on her dress. This will be the back of her dress, but today we're just going to work on the front of the dress and work on our symbols. She's going to have a little pocket where maybe I can tuck in a little note to myself or a little scroll. She might need a little more yellow in her hair to kind of match her dress. Oh, I like the little scoop neck there. Let's give her her little arms. So I've got lots of sewing to do, which is fun. We've got a nice long, does feel 1920s style. Yes, that twiggy, roaring 20s. Nice long weekend ahead with nothing on our schedule for the first time in a long time. So I'm excited to have a little extra playtime in the studio. So there she is. She's going to start to come together a little bit. So the next step, and I love just pausing and putting her together and looking at her and checking in with her. She says she definitely wants more of this. She needs some more yellow in her hair, maybe to match her dress. So I want to start to think here about, I keep forgetting to get, do I have my other pin cushion? I need some straight pins, so I'm going to take them out of here for now. I have bazillions of them. I have inherited several sewing boxes and bins of different things from different family members, which it's really, I love using them. And I need to remember to get them out. So I'm just going to stitch her together a little bit. I'm just going to use this long needle here so I can start to see the dress as a whole. And it'll make them easier to stitch if they're just a little bit pinned on. And so I'm looking at this now, wanting to bring some character, some dimension, wanting to think about this idea of different symbols. So we talked a little bit about colors, but let's also talk about symbols that might represent connecting to our intuition. So like Karen said, it feels like my inner wisdom keeper is someone who sort of, wears her heart on her sleeve. So I probably am going to want that heart on here. So on the first version of the dress, I just sort of intuitively picked the Celtic triple spiral and a feather were the two primary symbols, and these were just a little bit of sparkle and decoration, right? So this one is going to be a little bit more intentional in the design. So definitely feels like a heart. At first I was feeling like maybe a tree of life, but that feels, maybe the back of her dress will have a big tree of life on it. But what else in here might appeal? So I definitely think she needs to have some wings. Oh, and she's going to have some sort of blue or turquoise wings. Do I have any more? Oh, maybe she's going to, oh, this will work. One of these two blues. So rather than the wings being just stitched on, it feels like she wants to have some wings attached. So I'm probably going to make her some wings. Feathers for me are about thought, communication, and breath. So feathers feel important perhaps to repeat, but maybe just on this pocket here, I'll have that little bit of just a smaller feather on here, which I would stitch the feather before I stitch that pocket on. And I'm just sort of loosely, oh, interesting, an asterisk, emphasis, magic, and hidden meanings. So in the other ones, I did little crosses, but maybe she's going to have some little asterisks. And so we're just going to start really sketching this out. Oh, Katie, I love that so much. After the first episode, I had a dream where she came to me in the morning. I drew her out, created her pattern, now stitching her, and she'll be on your paper doll journal. Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we're going to get some of these asterisks poorly drawn, but they'll be happily stitched. I love spirals, so I'm wondering how maybe a spiral pattern might be get stitched along the bottom. I love the sun as well. Stars, crosses, flame. Interesting. There's the triple spiral. It represents past, present, and future. Also, our spiritual expansion. Again, that's a traditional Celtic symbol that you'll often see carved into stones. The star can represent guidance, inspiration, and divine connection, which is very potent when we think about connecting to something larger than ourselves, which is what they say keeps us all young at heart, is that idea of being connected to something larger than ourselves, something outside of ourselves. That could be purpose, could be our values, could be your definition of God, spirit, the universe. I'm feeling very drawn to this spirit wheel, that connection with higher self and the divine presence. And she's starting to maybe feel a little busy, and she's like, I like that. I want to be busy. And this will be a really easy one to just stitch the spokes of that wheel, more or less get that in the start, and I'll show how I might do that. I think it's taking me a while just to sit and think about who is she and what does she have to say. I love this one. Egg, new beginnings, key to unlocking wisdom. Oh, she might need to have like a little key, an actual key sticking out of her little pocket. So I might want to remember that one, right? An image of a hand, a candlelight. There's so many. We've got the heart, the wheel. I like the crescent moon, but this morning I was really drawn to this symbol of the triple moon, which often stands for the maiden, mother, and crone in all the cycles of our lives. And I'm definitely moving into that wise woman crone phase, and oak leaf. And what would an oak leaf symbolize to you? Somewhere in here, there's some leaves, I'm sure. But I love that. Oak is one of my most favorite trees. I'm also very connected to the oak leaf. And I'm wondering if this can maybe just kind of sort of sit in here a little bit. And I think as I'm doing this about the women from so many different cultures that beaded and adorned their clothes with embroidery, with symbols, with flowers. So it feels like a connection to some of that ancestral energy as well. Strength and wisdom, the acorn, beautiful. And for some reason, this one is feeling like it needs some water, some of the water element on it. So I'm thinking what's actually going to go down here is maybe going to be a wave pattern. And I'm going to start here, and I think some more things are going to come, but we'll start here. So I want to show you how I created the feather on this one. I'm going to do a little feather here because it turned out beautifully and it was super simple. It's literally just now I've forgotten the name of it. I got to look up the stitch. I think it was a back stitch. for the stem, you could do a back stitch or a chain stitch. And then I just used different colors of a satin stitch, which just is one long stitch to fill in the feathers. So was really happy with how that came out. And notice you can see a lot of my pencil marks. I could have used a different color pencil, but I actually felt like the pencil marks underneath gave it a little bit of weight and dimension to the design, so I didn't mind those pencil marks on there. So I'm going to, and I'm thinking this is gonna move down. Oh, that feels better down there. And let's put that feather in. And I'm going to use some of these different blues that are just sitting here. So I'm using leftover embroidery floss from other projects. I've mentioned Stitched Stories before. I really love her kits, and they come with whole skeins of embroidery floss, so you definitely end up with a lot of floss. And I'm going to be working with 2 skeins of thread. Normally I'm lazy and I don't like to separate them, but what I discovered was I really liked the way it looked, and you can create very different effects on the felt depending on how many skeins of floss you use. So sometimes you might want to try using 3 or 4 or all 6. If you're someone with a sewing machine that loves to sew, you could stitch a lot of these pieces and parts together with a sewing machine. I have a sewing machine, but I really love handwork. I mostly use my sewing machine for paper projects. All right, let's see if we can, and I've got a small needle here, and see if I can get it threaded this morning. Or I put my needle threader somewhere right in front of me. Surely I did. Always the slowest part of the process, and I could just use a bigger needle, but I liked this little small needle for the felt. I did it! Every time I am working small, oh, there's my needle threader right in front of me. Every time I'm working small like this, I remember that I need to go get my eyes checked. Where did I? Let me see if I can. I think it's helpful to know the names of some of these stitches because there's so many great YouTube tutorials by Teddy, YouTube tutorials on how to do the different stitches if you need up close, more specific information. These are from Stitch Stories from Debbie Hodges, and they're for my personal use, and I'm showing them to you because she has such great examples. So I'm going to use this outline stitch to create the inside of our feather here, which means I'm going to go down into the felt and then I'm going to come back towards that first stitch. And that first stitch was a little long, but that's okay. So I'm going to go down into the felt and then halfway back towards that previous stitch again. And I am no expert at embroidery. Like I said, there's a million phenomenal YouTube videos. I took some great classes on Skillshare to learn a lot of the stitches. And my thread that I'm using here is way longer than I need, but I was being lazy and didn't cut it. So you notice it might knot up a little bit just because of that. I'm going to go, I think, one more up to that corner. And what I noticed with the felt is that you don't want to pull your stitches too tight because the felt will buckle. Grab a sip of water. And then the next part, I really just kind of made up. So I just sort of picked a starting point and I just started making satin stitches up and down one side. So when you look at feathers up close, they aren't perfectly even though they might look at it. Some of them have, variegated colors. Some of them are all one color. And this is the same way I would create a stem or a branch of a tree. And then to do that satin stitch, you just start, let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. You're just going to put those stitches as close together as you can. And sometimes you're going to put one down and then you're going to come back between that one and the one before. And what's going to start to give this that beautiful feathery textured look. And I want the feather to be multiple shades of blue, so then I'm just going to skip a space. And I'm just going to do that same thing, putting those stitches as close together as I can. And when I'm working on these type of projects on my own, I like to connect to the intention, to the project, to the doll. I like to sit with questions. Is there a gift you have for me? Is there something you want me to know? What suggestions do you have for me on connecting to my intuition? And just allow those thoughts to surface and to just really keep that connection going, right? So these projects, in and of themselves, they are fun. They're relaxing. I find stitching personally to be incredibly relaxing, but they're also designed to be meaningful, to teach us something about ourselves. And what we learn about ourselves may come from the making of the doll herself. It may come from some journaling with the doll. It may come from the creative process and dealing with frustration or the voice of your inner critic. So there we have part of our feather simply started. I'm loving that dark blue on there. And then I'm just going to flop over to the other side. And again, you notice I'm not following any particular pattern or design. I'm just sort of working my way up. I had a very, very loose outline of a feather. I'm one of those people when I'm out walking, I pick up feathers and bring them into the studio. And for me, feathers are about lightness of being. They represent not just flight and the element of air, but thought. Do your thoughts feel heavy? Do they feel light? So I'm thinking about the symbol and how does this symbol help me connect to my inner wisdom, to my inner voice? It's funny as I'm just sitting here and I'm looking at what I've created, she's telling me she wants some pants to go under her dress. So like she has a long tunic, but then she has some flowy pants underneath as well. So I'm just listening. You might think I'm crazy. It's okay. I'm my own brand of crazy, but I'm also always practicing connecting. Some people connect through dreams, some people connect through writing, and I connect through art. And now I'm just going to come back in with some other colors of blue and fill that in. I'll probably use this same, and to knot it, I'm simply going to run my needle under a stitch, back through that loop, and I'll just do that a couple of times. I have a little knot there on the end that where I missed pulling it through. Don't care, no one's going to see it. It's on the inside of the pocket. Give that a nice little tug. And it's starting to come along. So I would just continue to do that with the different shades of blue and fill that in to get this satin stitch. So when I look at things like the heart or the wheel, the spirit wheel, the stitches I found most effective were either a back stitch or this outline stitch or a split stitch, right? So are some of the stitches that I would use to create some of these outlines. I always really love the way a split stitch looks. Let's see. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to bounce around here for just the next few minutes before I have to get to work. So not cutting this thread super long to make it just a little bit easier to work with, but I'm going to do the split stitch on that heart. And I'm mostly doing outline stitches. I'm not doing a lot of that satin stitch where you fill things in because I get bored really fast. So I encourage you to find the stitches you enjoy. And you could also have fun. I'm looking at this going, oh, an applique heart on there would be super cute. So, am I going to change my mind? Maybe it wants to be like the pocket where it has just a little, woo, that's very bright. That's like hurt my eyes bright. Yeah, a little more corally colored. So maybe I want to cut out a heart. She's wanting like lots of dimension and detail in this one. And I'm just trusting the process, right? Like there's no right or wrong here. Let's see if I can get this approximately the same size as that heart. So I just folded the felt in half like we do. All right, and then I'm going to stitch that heart on. It's interesting. She's wanting this sort of fun patchwork. Lots of little things added. Definitely feeling like this one is going to have some beads added. So maybe on the weekend I'll work on this and record myself working on it and add another video. Usually I do this kind of work sitting in front of the television at night. It's one of my favorite things to do while I'm watching TV. Oh, that one's too big for this needle. Okay, I might have to give in and get a bigger needle. Oh, I got it. Let's put a simple knot. She is very bright. So we could do an applique stitch, but this is also a good one for a back stitch. So you make that first straight stitch, then you come up a little away from that straight stitch, and then you go back down in the same place where you came up. And this is a great one for doing these rounded edges. So I'm coming up beyond that first stitch, going back down where the last one ended. Got a little pointy there because that stitch was a little long. So when you're doing rounded edges, smaller stitches are better. And I'm hearing one of the symbols that I was drawn to earlier was the arrow, that I'm going to also stitch an arrow onto the top of this heart to remind me to, my heart is my true north. It's the direction to travel. So once you get the hang of this one, it starts to go a little bit faster. More or less trying to stay an even distance from the edge. And this is the part of stitching that I love when we get into that, just that rhythm of the stitches. And you'll notice that I'm left-handed, and so if you're right-handed, you're going to probably do everything that I'm doing backwards. And as I try to go a little bit faster, those stitches got a little bit longer, a little bit messier. So it's a reminder to just slow down. There's no rush here. And if you wanted to, you could leave a little bit of that heart open at the top if you wanted to tuck a little secret something something in there. But I'm going to have that pocket also. And I love projects like this one where I have an idea or concept and I just dive right in, right? There's no right or wrong. There may be better ways to do things. I'm just sort of figuring it out as I go. And I want you to do the same, whether you're working on paper or fabric, just to trust your own creative process. If you have an idea that you want to try it. You can take out the stitches. You can get a new piece of felt. So she's starting to come together. You can see she's got a long way to go, which is why this project was designed to go across multiple episodes, but it's a good start. She's going to need a couple of more sessions for sure to finish her up, but we have her beginning to come together. And if you don't have felt on hand, you could 100% do this with stitching on paper, which I really love stitching on paper. You could do this with any fabric scraps that you had on hand. So don't get hung up in, well, I don't have the right supplies, because any supplies will do. Check out that symbol deck that's for sale on our website. It's a really great resource. And here in the States, it's a long weekend. Enjoy the long weekend, my friends. And I will be back next week and probably finish this one up over the weekend, and we'll be on to something new, but I don't know what that is yet. Have a wonderful rest of your week, a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me live. Thanks for catching the replay. Be sure to click that like button or leave me a comment. Let me know how you're doing, how you're liking what I'm creating. It tells other people it's a video worth watching, and your comments always mean the world to me. I do read every single one of them. So have a great day, my friends, and I will see you all soon. Have fun making your Wayfinder doll. Bye, everybody.